Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and today we have to go over the Vancouver Canucks. There's a lot going on in Vancouver right now, and we're starting to get more of an idea of what Patrik Allvin and the new management there wants to do. So we're going to be going over that today. So there's a lot of rumors going on in Vancouver in terms of what the direction of this team will be moving forward. And I got a couple of interesting comments that I want to go over from my last trade block video on the Canucks last week. So the first one is from Scott Morrison. So this is a little bit of a take that I think a lot of Canucks fans will not agree with. But let's hear it out, right? Because we want to hear from different perspectives. So from Scott Morrison. Trade Petey. That's how he starts. Trade Petey. He played way better in his first 2 years, and the last 2 years were what Pettersson is, a $5 million player at best. If we trade him now, we might get a top 4 defenseman and a top prospect. So that's interesting, trying to sell him high still for maybe lesser production, because of that's what the perception is that he is still that superstar franchise player, right? Everyone still thinks he is year 1 and 2 Petey. He is not. Sign Bo and Miller. And that may throw some people off re-signing Miller and keeping Bo Horvat, right? Also trade Niels Höglander, Garland, and Pullman. Hogg and Garland are small guys, and with the coach and Rutherford being old, they like big guys more. I do like I like where your head's going there. And to be honest, that is kind of true with what Jim Rutherford did in Pittsburgh. He brought in bulk. Right, he brought in big Eric Goodbranson. He brought in Mike Matheson. He did bring in some of those bigger bodies. So there is reason to believe that he's not completely wrong there. Second rounder for Hogg. First round pick or top prospect for Garland. A fourth round pick and a bag of pucks for Pullman. Pick a defenseman in the first round this year. I've watched this team since the early 70s and will die soon. Wow. That is a reality check, Scott Morrison. All I want is one cup before I die, and I'm starting to worry I will never see a Stanley Cup. That is the most to heart comment I think I've gotten in a long time. So thank you for that comment, Scott Morrison. A lot of thought put into that. So we're going to break this down a little bit. So the first one, trading Petey. I understand what you're saying here, and there may be some of that European bias that he's a smaller skill guy. You probably don't want to keep him around. And I think Pettersson is one of those guys that the Canucks kind of have to sell out for. They have to keep Pettersson because here's the thing. It's either you keep Pettersson and he continues to do what he's done, or he turns into that player that he was and he's just in a slump, right? Is that a scarier reality than trading him for what you're asking, a top 4 defenseman, and let's say Minnesota wants him? They trade Matt Dumba and Marco Rossi. Again, no real basis to this. I'm just saying, for what you want, right? Let's say Minnesota, they want a center, really good center. Well, Elias Pettersson fits that mold. You trade you get Matt Dumba and Marco Rossi for Elias Pettersson. Now, Elias Pettersson goes off in Minnesota. He's playing with Kirill Kaprizov. He's playing with some of those other really talented guys in Minnesota. He wins a Stanley Cup in 2022 or 2023, and now he's a Hart Trophy candidate. So it's, do you want to dance with the devil you know, or do you want to dance with the devil you don't? And I think that's part of the worry here for Patrik Allvin and the management. If they sell out on Pettersson, you better hope damn well that Marco Rossi and Matt Dumba will give you that or better. And to be honest, even at his worst right now, I still believe that Elias Pettersson is worth more than Matt Dumba and Marco Rossi together. And I like the comment there. There is some reason to believe the whole Höglander thing. Again, I don't know if you want to trade a former first-round pick for a second-round pick. That doesn't really go over well in optics. A first-round pick or top prospect for Garland. Again, they traded more for Garland last summer. Again, different regime, but still, I get what you're trying to get at here. You're trying to clear some cap room. So I really appreciate that comment, Scott Morrison. I'm going to make sure I reach out to you before this video comes out, so you're watching for this video. So there's your little moment there, Scott Morrison. So I hope you like that little take. Locomotives, also from that video, a little bit of a shorter, little bit easier to digest. Horvat, nice guy, but not a leader or captain. Interesting. Would love to see him gone and give captaincy, to JT Miller. So basically, JT Miller has been rumored to divide the locker room in Vancouver, and Bo Horvat is kind of kept quiet. And maybe Bo Horvat isn't that alpha dog leader that the Canucks need. So maybe they just sell into that whole satanic narrative around JT Miller, re-sign him, keep him there in Vancouver, potential Hart Trophy candidate, and make JT Miller your captain. I think that's an interesting thought there. A little bit on the dark side there for my man Locomotive. So interesting there. Now we're going to go to more of what, not necessarily fan perspective, but legitimate perspective from more of the industry. So this is from Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick on the Jeff Merrick Show. When asked what is catching his eye right now heading into the All-Star weekend, Vancouver, I think, is one. Jim Rutherford, he stuck to his word. He said, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm going to sit here, collect information, and then I'll start thinking about acting. If I remember correctly, Vancouver people will tell me if I'm wrong. He said, I'll probably start looking at things at the end of January, right around the All-Star break. Well, I look at the calendar right now. It's the last day of January, and word is starting to get out that Rutherford's starting to put his blocks in play here. And obviously number one on everybody's list is JT Miller. And if that's the way he wants to go, there's a lot of interest in Miller. I'll have some opportunities to do some things there if he wants, but I don't necessarily think it's only him. I'm sure he's checking in. What do you think of Boeser? What do you think of Pearson? What do you think of Dickinson? And that doesn't mean that these guys are going everywhere, but I think what he's doing is figuring out that market. And that's kind of what the Coyotes have done with Jacob Chychrun. Figure out the market, and then for some of these guys, you could wait till the summer and the offseason when teams have more cap space, when there's a little bit more volatility in the league for roster spots. That's when you sell Horvat. That's when you move on from Dickinson. That's when you move on from some of these players that we've been mentioning. I think that's going to be one. Miller, look, he's not withstanding what happened at the end of overtime. He's kind of the guy you want down the stretch in the playoffs. And there's other names he mentioned here. Guys like Luke Schenn, a very reliable defenseman, comes back to Vancouver this year and been pretty productive. Could be a really nice rental and a lot cheaper than some of these other names, like Mark Giordano, like the John Klingbergs, obviously. Even the Ben Sherratts in Montreal or the Jeff Petries. Luke Schenn could be the underrated, really good signing there. And again, he's won 2 back-to-back cups with Tampa the past 2 years. He is a pretty damn good defenseman. And you're looking at the Coyotes, you're looking at the Sabres, you're looking at the Devils as maybe teams that are going to look to make that move. So I think Jim Rutherford, if he wants to look at teams in order to clear some cap space, there have been rumors in the past. I mean, imagine Bo Horvat, who was traded to Vancouver in the Corey Schneider deal, going back to New Jersey. That was New Jersey's draft pick that Lou Lamoriello traded to acquire Schneider. Imagine Bo Horvat going back to the East Coast to New Jersey. What about maybe Brock Boeser? Imagine him playing alongside Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes. He's had a pretty good season this year. Brock Boeser could be an interesting ad going that direction. Conor Garland could also be in the same conversation. Maybe Philadelphia. Maybe a team like New Jersey again. Those teams have the cap space, maybe more so Jersey. Maybe they could facilitate that trade. Even the Buffalo Sabres, they want guys that want to be there. Maybe garner the interest of Garland. And, he's been with this situation in Arizona. He has that experience. Could he help the Sabres around some of their young talent and add a winger core with a pretty good player like Garland? I think that would definitely be interesting. Again, Brock Boeser, the 23rd pick in the 2015 NHL entry draft. He was a runner-up to Barzell in the 2018 Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year. And like I said, this summer he will be a restricted free agent, and I believe his qualifying offer will be $7.225. So that is the qualifying offer. It's going to come in at a hefty price for Brock Boeser, who is coming in at a $5.875 million cap hit right now. The 24-year-old will definitely see an upgrade, and he will be turning 25 before the summer. He will be turning at the end of February. At the end of this month, he'll be 25 years old. So Brock Boeser here, coming into his bigger years, there's definitely going to be some interest there. And like I said, this season, he's got 23 points in 39 games. So again, there is a little bit of that. He hasn't been completely healthy. He hasn't played a full 82-game schedule in his entire NHL career. So there is that little bit of concern there. Garland, a fifth-round pick of the Coyotes in 2015, 25 years old. So another guy that in 4 seasons in the NHL kind of, had to work his way from the ground up, and he's been a good addition. And we could see a lot of change to this team. You look at the guys that are being mentioned, I mean, the entire top 6 could be on the table. As crazy as that sounds, Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, Brock Boeser, Tanner Pearson, Bo Horvat, Conor Garland, all of those guys are in the rumor mill for the Canucks, right? So I think that's an interesting thought. So this is more on the front of Conor Garland. So this is from the Elliot Friedman 32 Thoughts podcast. I think the Canucks have a number of forwards they're discussing, including potentially Conor Garland. We all heard some of the rumors. The Rangers, the Bruins, the Flames, New Jersey in there too, potentially on some players who could have team and term control. So Conor Garland, because he just signed that contract, you could see that as a bad thing and maybe lowers his value. Not necessarily, though. That may draw some teams' interest that he has that term on his deal. This is from Elliot Friedman. Again, the same sentiment. The Rangers, Bruins, Flames, and Devils are the teams that are believed to be linked and interested in Conor Garland. Now, you knew this was going to come up at some point because we've heard a couple of these guys talk about JT Miller. The JT Miller front comes up again. This is from Nick Goss. So Goss wonders if the Bruins would part ways with Jeremy Swayman, their really protege goaltender here to Tuukka Rask, or Mason Lohrei for JT Miller. Those are some really highly regarded prospects. Mason Lohrei has been pretty good, and a lot of people like him up in Boston. Could he go in a deal for JT Miller? This is from Rick Dhaliwal. The feeling is that the Canucks forward JT Miller wants a 5 or 6 year deal worth well over $7 million annual average value. So that is pretty interesting there. And I think the Canucks, again, if you're going to pay him, pay him. But you need the cap space to do that, which means you're going to have to move some of these guys. So the Canucks are really going to be interesting at this deadline, because if they're going to keep JT Miller, they're going to have to move somebody else. Somebody, or at least 1 or 2 big guys, are going to move in Vancouver here over the next 6 months, potentially before the March 21st NHL trade deadline. Now, this is more on the Brock Boeser front. We're kind of going back that direction. So this is from David Pagnotta. There are teams expressing interest in Canucks forward Brock Boeser. Again, I look at the New Jersey Devils as a serious contender there. The New York Islanders, surprisingly, could be a team there. I think the Islanders could be a team in that mix. For some reason, Barry Trotz has not seen the connect with Oliver Wahlstrom. And I'm not saying the Islanders trade Oliver Wahlstrom, but that if they go in that direction, that would be the guy that would go the other way. Imagine the Canucks getting Oliver Wahlstrom for Boeser. I think that would be, honestly, a very good trade for the Canucks. I hope the Islanders don't do that, but that could be on the table. And this is from Elliot Friedman. The Vancouver Canucks could move Tanner Pearson if they wanted to. And this is a kid that was with the LA Kings for a couple years. Has been a pretty talented player. Tanner Pearson is no joke. And I think a guy that was part of the Tobolli trade when he was traded to the Kings last year at the deadline. Tanner Pearson could be a really nice addition for somebody. And I think a team like Calgary could be in the mix for Tanner Pearson. I don't know. I just have this tingle, that the spider tingle, right? That he could go there. So I think that's kind of interesting. Listen, guys, the Canucks, they're going to have their fair share of moves. And I didn't even talk about really defensemen. Tucker Pullman, Luke Shen, maybe even a trade for Tyler Myers has been on the table. All of that will be talked about here over the next couple of weeks. But I want to hear what you guys think of the Vancouver Canucks' latest. Tell me what you guys think. What has to happen for the Canucks? Because it's going to be moving pieces whether you like it or not. And Patrick Allvin, we're going to get a pretty good idea early on. He's going to have to dive into this job, kind of like what Pat Verbeek has to do in Anaheim. Kind of dive headfirst into this job in Vancouver and make moves, unfortunately or fortunately, pretty quickly. And I think this new era, this new management group here in Vancouver is going to want to put their stamp on this roster, and they could be doing that as soon as the next couple of months. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and go Canucks.